Sports.
The Pete Sousa Show, powered by Slovaceks on the Rogue Media Network, is joined now by Matt Mosley. Matt Mosley, this is not a better time to talk to you. Every Thanksgiving is historic in Dallas because it just reminds us of some of the amazing Thanksgiving Day games that we've witnessed, at Texas Stadium and now Jerry World. Will you be going to the game tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be there. I rarely miss one of these, and the chance to possibly see a guy like Tommy DeVito in person, although I'm worried now that they're saying it's not 100% that he'll go. So, and the Giants are actively tanking. People want the Cowboys to tank. They obviously don't know how to tank. And as evidenced by what happened in the Washington game. But I'll be there. I rarely miss this.
I know you got a nose in it, and there's a lot of dog in you. But you never know what's going on. Your daughter's a senior. This could be her last. It is her last high school Thanksgiving. You got all kinds of great stuff going on in Lake Highlands. I don't know.
You trying to make me cry or something? Everybody, I keep hearing these last things. I'm like, she's not coming home from college. I'm not going to see. So anyway, I have, you would love this sometime if we have more time, I'll have to tell you about one of the greatest Cowboys Thanksgiving stories ever.
Can you tell me now? How long is it?
Well, I did a story catching up. So one of the unbelievable Thanksgiving memories was this guy, Clint the Mad Bomber Longley.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And that happened
just from NFL films and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah. You were not born. I was like 1 or 2. This happened in like 75, maybe 74, 75. And it was Staubach got knocked out of the game. And Longley comes in, leads them to a win over the what they were then called the Redskins. And Blaine Nye had the awesome line after it, the Cowboys offensive lineman. He said, because Longley was different. He was a weird character, and there's a lot of stories involving him. But he was a young, talented player, and he came off the bench. And he leads the Cowboys to a Thanksgiving victory, one of the most famous Thanksgiving wins ever, because Staubach got knocked out and didn't even know where he was. And so here comes Longley. And so after the game, the Cowboys lineman, Blaine Nye, says, it was the triumph of the uncluttered mind. It was a good line. And then years later, as a young reporter at the Dallas Morning News, nobody had ever heard from Clint Longley. And I found him in Corpus, and I went they called him the Mad Bomber. And it was like an investigative journalism. I touched base, and I was able to get a hold of his wife, but she couldn't get him to talk. And so I went out to Corpus to try to find him. And I saw him coming out of his house. I was staking him out. To talk to the Mad Bomber. And I was going to be polite, but I thought, as a young, aggressive reporter, I'm like, they've flown me all the way out here. I got to get this guy to talk. I got to do whatever it is. And so, like an idiot, as he comes out of the garage in his truck, he's got his wife in the truck with him, and he peels out, and he's going pretty fast, and I decide to follow him. And so the story begins. I'll have to find the story and send it to you, with the Mad Bomber going down toward the beach, and he turns his truck back around, and he's coming at me on this little tiny road that leads to the beach. And I finally, at some point, I'm like, this is not worth dying over, like trying to get Clint Longley. And I pulled way off the road, and I watched him go by at about 80 on this tiny little road. And that was as close as I came to talking to Clint the Mad Bomber Longley.
Did he give you a look? Did he look like, what the hell are you doing when he drove by you?
He was going too fast. I can't say that I saw his
By the
look.
way, you left out And I know you just assume we know this, but didn't he get into a fist fight with Roger Staubach? Didn't he there was a fight, right?
Yeah, if you want to call a flat out sucker punch a fight, he snuck up behind Roger, and I think Roger was like taking his shoulder pads off or something, and I think he got traded the next day. I mean, almost. They traded him to San Diego, I think. But Longley snuck up on Roger. They were mad. He was mad at him for something. I can't even remember. And Danny White might have already been on the team, but he came up behind him and just completely sucker punched him. And to this day, that makes Roger mad that happened, and I think it was like Randy White, the manster, as I recall, grabbed Longley and like body slammed him or carried him out of there or whatever. But Longley never to be heard from again. And sadly, that's basically how things ended for him. Although there were teammates over the years that would keep up with him. In fact, D.D. Lewis, another famous Cowboys player, once hung out with him, and I had pictures of that went in the story.
Oh, so you wrote the story, you just couldn't get a quote from Longley.
Correct.
Wow.
His wife was talking to me the entire time. And like she wanted him to talk, but she knew. I mean, this was a and think about how long after this was like. I was doing that story in like 2002 or 2003.
Yeah.
I mean, it had been 25 years since he had retired from football. And he was living in this little cul-de-sac in Corpus, and he was in fights with all his neighbors. I mean, he was just a strange character. Like the whole little HOA was mad at him because he wasn't, doing something proper. He let his grass grow too long or something, and they were all mad at him. I mean, the Mad Bomber, I mean, it was the Cowboys have had some, like Hollywood Henderson, the Mad Bomber. They had one dude that got, arrested for some strange stuff.
Who was that?
A receiver that, I don't know if you want to get into any of that, but that would have been Rensel. I hope I have the right name. I don't want to get him mixed up with another receiver, but
okay.
Yeah. Lance Rensel, who was a pretty good receiver, but yeah, he was arrested for some weird stuff. And then of course the great Don Meredith, who once stopped talking, like he was like close friends with the writers, and the writers were extremely tough on the players back then. You would think that, it was just really interesting. It was still when the writers and the players would hang out.
Yeah.
And I someday I'll look that up for you. There was one of those writers wrote something about Don Meredith after a particular loss. And I think the writer was just horribly hungover is what led to him writing it. And he was actually good friends with Meredith. And in the beginning of that column or the story said something like Don Meredith, quote, or a comma, a born loser. And it was like after a tough loss to Cleveland or something. And that was either Gary Cartwright or Bud Shrake. Both of them are famous writers who sadly are gone now. But one of those two, and they were good friends with him. And I don't know what led to him. Who knows? But it was like an awful thing to say. I mean, they literally opened the story after the game calling him a born loser.
But in your memories from covering the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, was there a prolific game or a moment that stuck out for you on Thanksgiving Day game?
I think I remember one. I don't know. I don't know if it was prolific. I just remember they tried to start Drew Henson on Thanksgiving, and it went so poorly that the guy they basically ruled out for the game, Vinny Testaverde, they had to like get Vinny off the mat and wheel him out there and let him play the second half to have any chance. I think it was against the Chicago Bears. Parcells pulled Henson at halftime. And boy, Joe Torre, who was, of course, the famous Yankees manager, had kind of told Parcells, like, dude, this kid just doesn't, he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. So Parcells, this was a Jerry deal that Jerry did. So this was Bill kind of sticking it to Jerry. So he took Henson out of the game, and Vinny had to come out there. Now, did Vinny lead them to a win? I don't think so. I think they lost that game. But for some reason, when you bring up Thanksgiving, that one does come to mind. And by the way, Henson and I and Romo, the three of us were friends, but those two didn't like each other because Henson at one point, just because they gave up a 3rd round pick for him, was ahead of Romo. So they didn't care for each other. So it was like dating two people. As a reporter, I had to talk to them separately. I had to keep them apart.
Last one more question about that circle you mentioned, because this is something I wanted to make a note to ask you a while back. So when Drew Bledsoe says, Tony wasn't necessarily the guy who was hanging around the facility, compared him to Tom Brady, which is, that's tough to be compared to Tom Brady. Did Romo and Bledsoe, did they have a good relationship?
No. So Romo, and it was both of their fault, but Bledsoe arrived and he had an attitude, and he was kind of like, I've been there. I'm a big time guy. And he didn't, and Romo was an up and comer, and he did not treat Tony with that much respect. So when Tony, Drew kind of always resented Tony, and Tony obviously felt that. Tony worshipped Testaverde. Like, Vinny took Tony under his wing and was great to him, and where Drew kept him at arm's length. And so they never liked each other. And it was weird because the night that famous bobble happened, it was Parcells' last game with the Cowboys, and Tony had to hold, and he dropped the snap, and that led to them losing against Seattle. And I just remember we were out that night, and I ran into Drew at a bar in Seattle, and you could just tell Drew, that was kind of his place. He was from that part of the country, and so of course he was in there. Everybody loved him, and I just could kind of tell that Drew did try to console Tony after that game, but I promise you, Drew didn't feel that bad for him. So, but honestly, that was as much Drew's fault as Tony's. Tony, based on where Tony came from, and I know Cowboys fans still wish that he had done more, but I mean, Tony was unbelievable. Like what he was able to accomplish for the Cowboys, given where he came from, even compared to Dak. Like, Tony came from a place so far underneath Dak, you can't even believe it, from freaking Eastern Illinois, and nobody gave him a chance. And he literally became one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So anyway.
Did Bledsoe say anything to you about Romo when you saw him out?
Yeah, but it was whatever he said he was saying the right things.
Okay.
He was saying he felt bad for him. And again, Drew was just out there trying to blow off some steam. Yeah. But as I recall that night, I did not see like pain and anguish on Drew's face. I saw a guy who was glad the season had come to an end, and he didn't have to. I mean, think about how that is. First of all, you lose your job to Brady after being the bonus baby with the Patriots, and then you lose your job to an undrafted free agent quarterback in Romo. And so Drew, I think at that point was like, golly, let me get out of here.
How about, by the way, Matt, how about that? Two great coaches believing in themselves and knowing, hey, I'm making this decision. It's not going to be popular, but I'm doing what I have to do. And two careers go on to amazing success.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating how that happened, but I think that speaks to, I mean, Bill knew he had to do it, and he didn't really want to do it. I mean, he did not want to succeed or fail based on an inexperienced quarterback, but at some point he knew he had something with Tony. And everybody, by the way, tries to take credit for Tony, but there's a dude that is like a consultant now that nobody even knows about or talks about. with the Dolphins, and his name's David Lee, and he used to be the offensive coordinator for the Arkansas Razorbacks under Houston Nutt. But he's the guy who believed and like helped Tony the most out of all those people. Like Sean Payton gets credit, Parcells gets credit. There's a lot of people who want and try to take credit for Tony, but this guy David Lee, and unfortunately, David's a great friend of mine, but I can't have him on because he still works for an NFL team.
Yeah,
and he would get in trouble. But he's an awesome friend, great guy.
All right, one more thing for you, and as we get to present day with the Cowboys, you guys were hilarious on the Doomsday podcast. Honestly, entertaining and informative after that win, Ed Werder and Matt Mosley. It's up on the Rogue Media Network. Of course, you can hear Matt today on ESPN 1660, ESPN Central Texas. But you guys were funny. I mean, you compliment each other so well, and the quirks about they should have lost, and it's almost unfortunate that they won. What is the mindset of this team? Are they like, hey, we're going to win, we're going to bust our ass, like we're kind of want to give everybody a big shit burger to eat, as the like Lou Brown said in Major League, or are they, hey, are they just not a very good football team who had one good week?
Both. Like they're not good, but also it looks now like Washington, and again, I think Daniels is going to be really good and already is in some respects.
But all that praise, Matt, that was way ahead of schedule.
Maybe so, but he was playing great though. I understand why he got all the praise, but he I don't know what's going on. Cliff Kingsbury was being mentioned as a possible replacement for McCarthy, and that was not a great show they put on the other day, except for at the very end of the game when they hit on, I don't even think you'd call that a Hail Mary. I mean, just threw the got an 86-yard touchdown. And what a crazy ending to that game. But I think the Cowboys they've done this in the past when they've been bad. They've had a late season run. Is there a path where they could possibly get back to 500 at 7-7? Yes. Do I think they'll beat both Cincinnati and Tampa in Arlington? I do not. I think Joe Burrow, I think Baker and Tampa. I mean, they've been horrific at home. So I would not trust this team at all at this point, but I would also not be totally shocked if they somehow ran this thing to 7-7. And then everybody would go crazy, and we would be talking about how, maybe they'll somehow backdoor the wild card. But I give this team it's about the same chance that Baylor has to play in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
I give them like a 2 to 4% chance of making the playoffs. Tomorrow's
atmosphere, will it be celebratory and exciting like a Cowboys Thanksgiving Day game usually is, or will it be a little flat? And do you think
flat?
Do you think flat?
Yeah, I think that was the other day against the Texans. There were a ton of empty seats,
but it's the Thanksgiving Day game. You got Lainey Wilson at halftime.
Is she good? I can't think of anything she does. I kind of like Miranda and Casey Musgraves.
This one's she's awesome. Yes, Lainey Wilson's impressive. She's from Louisiana though. That's the one thing. She's not a Texas girl.
And Carrie Underwood from Louisiana?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's from Oklahoma, actually. I know that Lainey Wilson had a concert. I think it was in Baton Rouge or New Orleans, and she had Kim Mulkey there as like the guest of honor. Because Kim's Miss Louisiana now. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, every time I get involved in Kim discussions,
Kim's awesome.
Go well,
Look, I'm going to say it. She's awesome. If I could have played for a coach like that, I would have loved it because she would have gotten the best out of me. But we can leave it at that.
We'll leave that off your broadcast tomorrow. leave that
Matt
nugget.
Mosley. Yeah, definitely. ESPN Central Texas. Matt, thanks so much, dude. I appreciate it.
All right, you bet. See you, Pete.
All right, see you, bud. All right, the Pete Sousa Show rolls on after this. Thanks so much to Matt Mosley. He'll be catching up with Cam later on today. Or should I say Cam will be catching up with him, right? Cam's laughing. Cam's next. Thanks so much. Stay with us. The Pete Sousa Show rolls on after this.
It's